Hey everyone, welcome back to my astrology channel. Today we're going to talk about Mars. So we're going to talk about Mars in your first house. All right, to understand that, let's first talk about what is Mars. Okay, so what is Mars? Mars is, you can take Mars as a commander of the universe. So if Sun is the king and Moon is the queen, then Mars is a commander of the universe. So Mars is raw action. It's a warrior. Mars is going to go and get that action done, get that job done via the action. Okay, it doesn't think about the consequences. It just likes to get the job done. So Mars is also courage. Mars is aggression. So if you have someone sitting, if you have Mars sitting in the first house, that person may be very aggressive. We're going to talk about more qualities of that, but I wanted you to understand what Mars is. All right. So it's a warrior, it's a commander, it's aggressive. It can get temperamental very easily. By it, the native who has this placement can get aggressive very easily, can get angered very easily. Then they don't know what they're doing with their actions when they get angry. Because commander's job, the warrior's job, is basically to go out there and do the war. They don't think who is getting killed, who's getting hurt, whose emotions are at line. So that's kind of like your Mars. Okay. And now let's talk about the three different aspects of Mars. Okay. To understand how and what Mars does on the house, we want to understand Mars and then the aspects. So Mars has three different aspects. First aspect is going to be on the fourth house from where Mars sits. The second aspect is going to be on the seventh house from where Mars sits. And the third aspect is going to be on the eighth house from where Mars sits. Why does Mars have the fourth aspect? Mars, because it's a warrior, and the fourth house in the Kalpurush Kundali is of the house of the home and the mother. So your homeland, your motherland. It's a house of happiness. So warriors are supposed to protect your homeland, your motherland. So Mars has that special aspect that no other planet has, the fourth aspect, to protect its motherland from where it's sitting. The second aspect is on the seventh house from where it's sitting. Every planet has a seventh aspect, and as I always say, it's kind of like give and take. You give and you get. So Mars by nature is a malefic. It's a natural malefic. So if you give that house malefic, you're going to get back malefic many folds. Just like I mentioned in my Jupiter videos, the seventh aspect, if you give it love, you get back love many folds. So that's kind of the seventh aspect, because it's a straight up 100% aspect on it, drishti, because it's the house is right in front of you. You can't miss it. You're going to look at it. So the next aspect is the eighth house. Why do we have the eighth aspect? Why does Mars have it? Well, in the Kalpurush Kundali, Mars rules the first and the eighth house. So Mars has a special aspect of watching over his own house. Okay, so eighth house is Scorpio, but whatever sign it's placed, it doesn't matter when Mars is aspecting it, because that's going to be the eighth aspect. No other planet has the eighth aspect. So Mars has the fourth and that eighth aspect separate from all the other planets. Jupiter has the 5, 7, 9. Mars has the 4, 7, and 8. Now the eighth aspect, what does Mars do over there? So eighth is his own house. What do you do when you look at your own house? You're going to try to kill off the enemies of that house. So for instance, let's say that eighth aspect ends up being on the fourth house. Now the fourth house is the house of happiness, as I just mentioned. Now Mars is going to want to kill the enemies of the happiness for that native. So that's good. It may seem not good while it's happening, but at the end of the day, that's what Mars' goal is. So now that you understood what Mars is, what are the aspects, let's go into what Mars does when it sits in your houses. So let's talk about Mars sitting in your first house. As I mentioned, when Mars sits in your first house, it can make you very aggressive. It can make you be a person who gets angered very quickly, maybe even at little things. and wants to go and take care of it. It doesn't think about what actions it's doing. It just wants to take care of the issue at hand. That's Mars in your first house. Now, depending on whether it's malefic or benefic for your horoscope, if it's malefic, it is actually going to affect that individual. That individual may lose respect in front of other people. That individual may end up doing malefic things that could land that individual in places where they don't want to be because they're not thinking about their actions. And let's say Mars is malefic for that horoscope. Now, Mars is going to make that individual do aggressive things that are not good for the individual. Now, if Mars is not malefic and it's actually a benefic or functional benefic for that horoscope, or even a neutral that has lost its maleficness due to being in the positions that it needs to be, and reach out to us if you'd like to know, what your Mars is, how it is. We'll be happy to look at your horoscope and tell you. But let's say Mars is a benefic for this particular person. Now, Mars sitting in there, it's still going to show its natural tendencies of aggression, of being angered quickly, of the action-packed doing, but it's going to channel it the right way. It's not going to use it to do unethical things or things where his integrity is not in place, his or her. It's going to do things to take care of the things that it feels are unethical. Perhaps it sees somebody is hurting somebody else and it wants to just jump into action to take care of that individual, to protect that individual. So that tendency then is going to be more on the protective side versus the other side that's unethical. So that's how Mars being malefic or functionally benefic for your chart would determine. Now let's talk about the three aspects as I mentioned. So the fourth aspect, as I mentioned, is on your motherland. That's why Mars has it. So when Mars is doing a fourth aspect on this particular case, it's going to be on your fourth house. What is house four? House four is your mother. It's your home. It's your happiness. It's your sukoon, peace of mind that they say. It's also your real estate, your property, your own home that you build, and the other real estate that you do, maybe investments. It's also your vehicles. So when Mars places its aspect on the fourth house, and it's also heart, by the way, in your body parts, it represents your heart as well. So when Mars is placing an aspect on it, again, if it's a benefic aspect, functionally benefic aspect, then it may not do as much damage. You may still see that because of it being a naturally malefic. You may still see, say, your mother, okay? Your mother may not be as present as you would like her to be. Your mother maybe you have too many siblings in your family and your mother's not able to give you the kind of attention that you want. Your mother there may be other things with your mother. Maybe she's gotten older quicker. Maybe she's aging quickly, etc. Now, if it's malefic, your mother may be absent. She may just not be present at all. When you're talking about happiness, it's the same thing. Your family environment, your happiness in your family environment would be impacted if Mars is malefic. If it's benefic, it's going to be impacted less and it may change as things progress. Your real estate, you may have trouble collecting real estate. You may have trouble building even your own home up to a certain age, at least until 28 to 30 some years of age. You may not even have your own home built. And other real estate investments. And if you do other real estate investments, you may face some losses in them. Your vehicles may be an issue with them as well. So those kind of things you will see when Mars is sitting in the first house, aspecting the fourth. Now let's talk about its aspect on the seventh house. That's on the house of your spouse. So a lot of Vedic astrologers, when they look at this chart, they will say that this is a Mangalik dosh because Mars is sitting in the first house. Now you can see why. Because when you have Mars sitting in the first house, the native is going to be very aggressive. Now, if Mars is malefic, this could be very bad for the spouse or the business partner. So what is house 7? House 7 is your life partner, your business partner, your business itself, your mediation skills. Now you can imagine Mars sitting in the first house affecting your mediation skills. It's very aggressive. Mediation is more talking, more trying to calm the situation down, looking at it from both sides. Now, if you have Mars, somebody like with the qualities of Mars mediating, it's probably not going to have the best mediating skills. Now, also with the aggression of the spouse. Now, if spouse ends up having a Mars in their first house, you can just imagine the kind of aggression they would have. Now, people do say that, hey, Mars Mongolic can go with Mongolic, perhaps because they're both have the same kind of aggression and they can work things out. However, that's kind of what you see. It does impact their married life because the person that has the Mars in their first house is quite aggressive and is more action packed. So definitely look at your charts on that. If Mars is benefic, the person is still going to have aggression, as I mentioned, and it's still staring straight at that seventh house. There will still be instances where the person could have harsh speech. The way they're talking can come out very aggressive, the way they talk to their partners in business or in life. Now let's talk about the eighth aspect. As I mentioned, eighth aspect is on its own house. In this particular case, the eighth aspect is on the eighth house because Mars is sitting in the first house. What is house eight? House eight is the house of transformation. House eight is the house of sudden loss, sudden gains, inheritance. It's also one house next to your spouse, so it's your house of your in-laws as well, or your spouse's family. It is also the house of secrets, dark, hidden stuff, research. The kind of professions that it would impact would be surgery, um, occult sciences. It could be manufacturing, foundation repairs, because anything under the surface is from house 8. So people that work in foundation repair companies, perhaps they may have some things in their chart that is connecting to house 8. So that's what you see from house 8. Now, when Mars is aspecting house 8, okay, if Mars is benefic for your chart, then it's still going to impact. You may still have some sudden losses in your life. The sudden losses could be anything. It could be your job. You suddenly just lost your job. You suddenly lost a love interest. You suddenly lost a partner decides to leave you. So you suddenly lose your partner. You suddenly lose friends. You can suddenly lose your vehicles, your real estate, things like that. It's a house of sudden loss. So if it is malefic for your horoscope, you will see those things um, impacted to a much greater extent. That would impact you for a long term. Those sudden losses could be worse. They could be people passing or things of that nature. But if it's benefic, then you may see different kinds of those losses, but you would still see it because Mars is malefic by its natural tendencies. It's just if Mars is benefic for you, you won't see it as much as you would see if it was malefic. So if you are seeing any of this stuff in your charts, if you have Mars sitting in the first house and you can relate to the things that I've mentioned to you, do let me know here. Now, again, keep in mind, conjunctions, associations, they do matter. So if you have Mars sitting there with another planet, or if you have Mars in the sign that's not Aries, or if it's a sign that's different sign, it's going to have a few changes, but the underlying, the basis you're going to still see is going to be the same. It's just how the severity of it kind of changes there. So do write that in the comments, and we do provide personal horoscope consultations. Do reach out to us in the link below, and we'd love to get that for you. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, share this video, and thank you so much for watching.